Hello. Almost forgot my pad. Two Are You Afraid of the Darks today, one of which, Are You Afraid of the Dark's take on The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which allows me to once again mention that in one of these boxes, probably at the end, will be the videos of me reading this to YouTube, to you if you want. It's a really good story, one of my favorite ghost stories, which is why in a couple of days I'll be going to Sleepy Hollow and I'll have the book with me. Should inspiration strike for me to sit down and read some. Don't know if I will be videotaped for it and if the video will make it to the channel, but I love talking about it. I love mentioning that I'm going to go there, and I love promoting, and I don't do a lot. I should do more promoting of my other videos that I make, just in case that turns out to matter. But the Are You Afraid of the Dark episode is called "The Tale of the Midnight Ride," and as I was watching it, I realized that is the first time that one of these episodes bumps up against something that I had previously talked about on the YouTube, namely the Legend of Creepy Collars, I think they called it, the Wishbone version of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and all the others pretty much, but mostly that one because it's the same early 90s kids television aesthetic. But it is also a story that I obviously love, have read multiple times, am reading currently, and have seen the Wishbone version, the Disney version, the Tim Burton version. I've never seen a live stage musical version, but there are at least two I have researched. It's low on that list, but that's just because of that there's a list, as opposed to most of these other episodes don't have things to compare them to. We'll see going forward if that changes, but I can't think of any. So, and it also kind of suffers from a pattern that I've noticed with Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes, is the runtime kind of depends on the kids in the stories running around like chickens with their heads cut off for at least some portion of the second act, which is it's something that I've kind of noticed before, but it really hit it home with these two episodes. Not exactly a problem, just kind of a funny pattern that I've noticed. So getting to the actual episode, when we last left the Midnight Society, it was made up of a certain collection of people. And now, two of those people, Kristen and is it David? I think it was David. Kristen and David are gone. They have moved away, and so part of the Midnight Society storyline, at least for the first few episodes, is who we got to replace them. We've got two openings, and someone's going to bring someone, I think Gary said at some point, but he, in the meantime, had a suggestion, and turns out to be his brother Tucker, which naturally, as I guess little brothers do, inspires the ire of his friends, and say things like, "We're not babysitters." And he says, "I had to bring him." He says, "My mom said I had to bring him, or I couldn't come anymore," which is a pretty since this is characters on TV, obviously the writers wrote that in, and I guess it's a pretty realistic sort of parent, little brother, big brother thing to happen. It just struck me as, and I'm not saying this is what it is, it just struck me as convenient or even lazy, but I know it wasn't that. It just struck me that way because it's been a long time since I've been that age and been treated like I was that age. So it was interesting, just that element of it. But since I grew up watching the show and thinking he's the all-powerful leader of this group, to think that there's a power higher than him that can make him not involved with the group at all, that's what struck me as strange. But it's just a reminder, it's a kid's show, these are kid characters, and they have people over them. So I keep going off on tangents. Well, that's not a tangent. That had to do with the show. So it starts with the narration from Tucker, narrating, giving a broad overview of the legend of Sleepy Hollow, which actually has a lot more to it than is typically recited. The main kid's name is Ian. He's the Ichabod stand-in, new to town. There's a Brad, who is essentially Brahm, and there's Katie, who is essentially Katrina Van Tassel. And the relationships are what they are in the thing. Brahm wants Katrina Van Tassel. Ichabod is in the way of that, and etc. So Ian is he's one of these, he's wearing a vest and a tie even though he's a kid, which was me kind of too, and he's new in town, and he notices Katie walking. She's going to set up for the Halloween dance. She's got the Halloween decoration. She gets hit with a football, which was tossed by Brad, and Brad gives kind of a half apology, not really apology, and Ian comes over to help. And then he says that he'll help her set up the dance. And he is rude to Brad in the way that kind of a kid trying to be macho for the girl will be rude in a clumsy way. Later they're setting up for the dance, and Brad kind of threatens him when Ian's standing on a table to hang a pumpkin, and Brad pushes the table out from under him, and he's hanging from the ceiling, and he says, "Stay away from my girl," essentially. So then later at the dance, Katie and Ian show up in similar costumes. I think they're wearing tri-corner hats and different versions of old-timey clothes. I think maybe they're both supposed to be Ichabod Crane or just pilgrims or whatever. And then Brad arrives. They're dancing together. Brad arrives and kind of drags Ian out of the dance. Katie follows, and Brad then tells the story of the legend of Sleepy Hollow. So we've gotten it now twice in abbreviated form. Now he says that the Bridge of Souls, I don't know if that's what it's, I don't recall if that's what it's called in the actual Washington Irving story, but it's what they call it. He says it is still there in Sleepy Hollow, and that the Headless Horseman cannot cross it. The bridge is actually not still there. They have a facsimile bridge at another part, that's part of the Sleepy Hollow kind of tour experience, but the actual, I think it was a covered bridge that is referred to in the story, is no longer there. There's just a regular road bridge there. But there's a plaque that says this is where the bridge was. And then there's the church. And then a little ways in the other direction is a beautiful sculpture of the Headless Horseman. Visit Sleepy Hollow and Terrytown. Kind of have to visit Terrytown if you're going to visit Sleepy Hollow, because it's one of the closest train stops. Let's see. But Brad says there's an initiation. You have to go to the bridge, and you have to get the Headless Horseman's pumpkin. And then Katie later says, there's no initiation. This is not a tradition. You don't have to do this. But Ian says, no, I'll play along. I'll go it. I'll do it. And he wanders over to the bridge, and he finds a pumpkin that's glowing green. It's a jack-o'-lantern that's glowing green. It's got a glow stick in it. That's why. And he says, very funny. And then he hears laughing, and then there's a Headless Horseman comes after him. But of course it is Brad. But he's Ian has been primed to be very freaked out. He falls backwards. He says, "Don't take my head," and that was where, and also Brad mocking him for saying that, was where I remembered specifically I have seen this one. And then there were later images that reminded me. But it's one of those things that I point out. That's where I saw, yes, I have seen this one. I remember this one. So Brad has humiliated Ian and thinks that earns him Katie. Katie will not go with him. And then we start seeing kind of hints that the real Headless Horseman might be around. As Katie and Ian are walking back towards the school, I guess, or maybe towards Katie's house, they meet a guy on horseback, dressed like them and with very pale face. It is Ichabod Crane's ghost, and they give him the right directions. There's a fork in the road. That's the whole thing. Ichabod takes the wrong turn at the fork, and they tell him how to get to the bridge, thereby saving his life. So then Ian takes Katie home, and then Ian has to go back for his bike, but he realizes his key for his bike lock is in his jacket, which is back with Katie, and Katie brings him the jacket, and there they encounter the shadow of the Headless Horseman on the wall of the school, which then, in a kind of fiery reveal, early 90s special effects, peels away from the wall and becomes a three-dimensional Headless Horseman ghost. And then it, of course, comes after them. Brad shows up last minute as they're running away, and he sees the thing and he falls back and says, "Don't take my head." So it's a callback and a revelation that he's not as cool as he thinks he is. They realize they changed the story, and I guess they both have bikes, and they bike to the Bridge of Souls. We see them biking to the Bridge of Souls with the horseman chasing after them, and then Katie says she's going to distract it, and that doesn't go well. Ian throws the pumpkin that has the glow stick in it at the Headless Horseman, because the Headless Horseman, that's what he does. He throws his jack-o'-lantern at you in order to knock you down. That's his weapon, even though he also has a sword. He's got to knock you down before he can use the sword. Ian throws the pumpkin at him. The Headless Horseman vanishes, and then kind of randomly vanishes. And then the Ichabod ghost reappears and says, "You know, it just feels wrong. The way that I went is a very over-the-top kind of performance. Just because it feels wrong to have gone that way. I'm going to go the other way, and I think that will set things right." So it's like he knows. Which, you know, was he just, now that he's a ghost, is he and the Headless Horseman just playing with people, saying, getting directions or whatever? Yeah. He's the best part of the episode. It's a fine episode. Like I said, it only suffers by comparison with all the others that I also love and more recently watched. But he's the best part, the guy playing Ichabod Crane. So that's Tucker's first story. And the rest of the kids are kind of like, okay, we accept him. He can stay. And then in the next episode, it's not his episode, but it's one of his first as part of the group. And things start disappearing. Like Kiki's about to start her story, and she doesn't have the powder that they throw on the fire to make it. And then at the end, the bucket to douse the fire is missing, and Gary's kind of left alone. Like, guys, where's the water? And Tucker has been hiding these things. He's playing jokes. He's doing little brother stuff. So, yes, as mentioned, the next story, The Tale of Apartment 214, is a Kiki story. And everyone's talking, perhaps because Dave and Kristen recently moved, they're talking about moving. I think maybe somebody else is talking about moving, and they're saying how lousy it is. And Kiki says she loves moving, which is a setup for her story. And for the record, I do too. It's fun to pack everything up, look at everything, some things that you haven't seen for a long time, maybe get rid of some stuff, donate it, sell it, whatever, and then unpack it in a new place, create a new environment. Not something that should necessarily be done often, but an experience that I think is actually a very moving one. So her story is about moving, and her main character is Stacy, whose parents are maybe going to split up. I don't know that I don't think there's a resolution to that by the end, but it's they're not divorced. They are considering getting a divorce, and she and her mom have moved into an apartment, a small apartment, with a crabby manager. And their apartment is 212, or no, theirs is 213. Angela's is 212. That's a friend that Stacy meets, or a person that Stacy meets, becomes a friend later. But Stacy notices that the door to 214 keeps mysteriously opening. And she listens at the door, she knocks at the door, doesn't get a response. And then one day, she comes back from school early. Her mom says, "Oh, you're back from school early." And she's looking at the apartment porch. And then she sees that the porch next to her mom, somebody's peeking out from it. And that she knows that's 214. So she goes to 214, and the door is open. She just kind of walks in and pays a visit. And it's an old lady sipping tea. She says she's a painter. She's got paintings on the wall. And she says that her nephew Frank had promised that she could live with him, live out her years. And then he broke his promise because his family grew and he didn't want her in the house anymore. So that's the whole and Kiki, I forget exactly what she says, but she has something about moving and keeping a promise. But keeping a promise is a big theme. And this woman says Frank broke his promise to her, which is, it's played as the worst thing in the world, but sometimes circumstances change, I guess. And I don't know if Frank is necessarily the villain that he's made out to be. But it impacted her, it hurt her, and she had to move then into apartment 214. That is her origin. But she bonds with Stacy over the idea. Stacy's just moved in. Madeline is the old woman. She says she's lived a long time. Many of her friends are gone. Stacy misses her old friends. And so the old woman says, well, you come and visit me frequently, and we can be friends, and it'll be nice. And so we get a montage of that, Stacy visiting. And then the old lady says at one point, now I hope you'll come to visit me on this particular day, because it's a day I don't like to be alone. It's a very sad day for me. And Stacy says, of course, I'll come. But then Angela, who's been kind of in and out of the picture, offers Stacy tickets to the Battle of the Bands, which I've noticed, not among Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes, but just in general, is when you don't want to name a band, but you want to have tickets to a concert that are exciting, you say Battle of the Bands. And Madeline says, oh, well, I've got to visit my friend, or no, Stacy says, I've got to visit my friend, I promised. And Angela says, well, there's a free ticket to Battle of the Bands. It's a really cool thing. And Stacy relents, and she goes, and then after the concert, she does go visit, but apparently not, apparently Madeline was counting on her being there for longer, and she arrives, and the door's open, she goes in, doesn't see, or she sees Madeline over by the window, and there's lightning flashing, and it's raining, it's very stormy, it's dark in the apartment, it's backlit, then let's see, this one, and Madeline, okay, sorry for the delay, Madeline starts saying, why did you break your promise? You're just like Frank, you broke the promise. It's a very important day to me. I don't like being alone on that day. It's very sad today. It's the day that I died. And that, for the record, is when I recognized the episode as one that I have seen. I'm sure I've seen most of them, but just the moment in each that stuck more than the whole rest of the episode. That's the day I died. It's kind of like in the Phantom Cab, the guy turning his head around and saying, I sort of died. It's that sort of thing. So then, after she yells that at Stacy, the lights come on, but everything in the apartment vanishes, and it was a ghost apartment. The manager says it's been impossible to rent that apartment. There's nobody in that apartment because someone died there. And we get the story slowly, but then, so Stacy kind of moves on, but she's still a little haunted. She still looks at the door and wonders. And then her mom is going out to dinner with her father. They're going to try to reconcile, but she emphasizes no promises. I'm pretty sure that that happens. It's an interesting way of dealing with separation and divorce, like that element of it. A lot of children's media kind of focuses on the divorce itself, but the maybe not kind of feeling I don't see as much. And of course, once she's gone, Stacy starts hearing knocking. She looks through the peephole of 214, sees Madeline, but then opens the door, and once again the apartment is empty, except there's a painting of Madeline and Stacy sitting on the couch together. The apartment reappears around her as she's looking at the painting, and and Madeline does too, and so starts explaining why it hurt her so much that Stacy wasn't there. Then Stacy flees, goes back to her apartment, but then there's a note under her door, and I don't know. I'm losing myself in my notes here, but ultimately, actually, it's the dog. Stacy's dog wanders into 218, and Stacy follows him, and that's when she and the old lady kind of reconcile. The old woman says she keeps the apartment to herself by scaring off any tenants. That's why the manager can't rent it. She says she's too old to... Stacy brings up, well, can't you move on? If you're dead, why can't you move on? She's, I'm too old to change my ways, which is a funny sort of, like, a lot of with ghost stories, the idea is that they've got unfinished business, they can't move on, and you know, a lot of very old people die, and so the idea that the ghost stays behind because she's too set in her ways is one that I haven't seen often, if I've seen it at all. Mostly the unfinished business has to do with revenge. So they emphasize that making friends is important. They decide they're going to be friends, and it's a bigger apartment, and no one else can rent it, and which means it's at a reduced rate. So Stacy and her mom move into the bigger apartment, and Stacy spends more time with the ghost, and the ghost is therefore never lonely again. Everybody's happy. So yeah, sorry I got a little bit lost in my notes for that one, even though I took them in the light. I always have slightly less room on the back of the page because it's folded over the front than I do in the front. But my next notes will be on the front. Anyway, the next two episodes are The Tale of Watcher's Woods, which is a title I'm familiar with, and The Tale of the Phone Police, which is a title I'm not familiar with. So I don't know, but I've probably seen at least one of them. And I'm excited to rewatch The Tale of Watcher's Woods because one of the guest stars is Jewel State, Catalina from Space Cases, and also another mechanically minded character whose name I do not recall. It might have to do with a flower from Firefly / Serenity. I don't know if the TV show was Firefly and the movie was Serenity, or vice versa, even though I've seen it. But the malevolent supernatural force I live with would know. Anyway, check out my Sleepy Hollow videos as well, and pleasant dreams, everyone.